Hi, everyone. I'm Dave.
I'm Helen.
Just
hey.
so we're, you probably could have guessed that. We're both product managers at Atlassian, and we have a pretty broad topic today. A lot of ground to cover. We got Jira, Confluence, Server, Cloud. So let's just get into it. I want to start with a story. Like any good story, it's going to start on a dark and stormy night. There's a massive storm brewing. You're the captain of a ship with a small crew. You are alone at sea. That's you. You're in the boat. It's dark. Your team shows up. Where are we going, Captain? They ask. And you say, we are going to a great place, the land of Jira. We're saved, they say. But soon your team realizes that life on Jira could be even better. So you get Confluence. Now you've got Confluence and Jira, and everything is great. Your team grows. Maybe you add a bot. Maybe everybody starts creating their own Trello boards. Your island is really taking off, so you hire some contractors. Then you acquire another island, and they've already set up their own Jira and Confluence and Jira Service Desk. And then you realize that your island really needs single sign-on and standardized security policies. It's definitely way too much for one captain to handle. So what do? You need a team of people to help you right the ship.
Okay, Dave, let's just hold up.
What's up, Helen? I've got like 40 more minutes of
You've
this.
totally lost the metaphor, and it wasn't even that good to begin with, and it just got worse, and now it's pretty dead. It's actually really dead. So, do you mind if I take the wheel and steer the ship back on course?
That's an even worse joke than mine, but you go ahead.
Okay. So, unfortunately, I have to give it to Dave because he is right. And whether you're a cloud server, data center, customer, or you're all of the above, managing any deployment can be really tricky if you don't understand how all the pieces fit together. And it's also really tricky because as your organization grows, the management process can get even more complex. And managing Atlassian deployments can be particularly hard. For a start, we've got a lot of really amazing products, such as the entire Jira family, Bitbucket, and Trello, but they all perform very different functions across a diverse set of use cases. And not only do we have multiple products, frequently larger companies have multiple instances of those products. So you might have one Jira software instance for your North American team, and then you might have another one for your European team. And some project management is done in Portfolio for Jira, while other parts are done in Trello. And it's all exacerbated by the fact that acquisitions of other companies and departmental silos can make this even trickier. So even if you work really hard to consolidate the whole company, your boss might just decide, hey, I want to make another acquisition, and they bring in an entire new Jira instance. Or maybe you have multiple IT departments, so there's no impetus for getting everyone onto the single tool. All of that means that there are Atlassian administrators breaking down into tears all day, every day, probably. Okay, we just made that up.
Kevin told us that we needed more data in our presentation. So the bad news is that Helen and I definitely do not have all of the answers, or even most of the answers. These are hard problems, but we spent a lot of time observing Atlassian customers, and what that's told us is that the organizations that are the most successful in overcoming these challenges have a team of people working together to make their Atlassian deployment successful. There are basically three steps that every successful admin team goes through. The first is to understand the landscape of your Atlassian tools. This can vary widely depending on whether you're using our products on premises or in the cloud. Moreover, your approach will change depending on whether you're administering one massive Jira software data center instance or a bunch of smaller Jira and Confluence instances. And once you know what that landscape looks like, you can start to set expectations for your admin team. What are the roles of each member of the team? We've identified several different personas that we'll walk you through that a successful admin team typically contains. Maybe one person is all of the roles on that team, or you have a big group where you can divide up the responsibilities. But either way, we hope that by presenting these well-defined roles, you can start thinking about which humans belong in each role within your team. And finally, my favorite part, we'll walk you through the latest and greatest improvements that Atlassian has made for administrators across cloud, server, and data center. We've invested significantly in improving the Atlassian administration experience regardless of what product or what deployment option you've chosen, and we can't wait to show you all the new stuff that you can start taking advantage of. So I want to start with what we're calling the Atlassian admin hierarchy. Basically, there are all these various administration layers that you can operate at within your tools. And without clearly understanding the different types of administration that we have, you can't start to think about how they can all work together. So when you're on premises, your admin hierarchy is a little bit more flat, and IT is typically more centralized. One of the key distinctions is that not only do you have to manage multiple instances of the products, but multiple versions as well. So you have control over upgrades, but that control comes at the cost, as many of you are probably painfully aware, of planning and executing those upgrades. And you have to maintain compatibility across many systems, depending on the versions. You have Jira Software 7.7.1, Confluence 6.2, and all these different apps and integrations. But probably most importantly, there's no global administration layer beyond maybe your corporate LDAP or maybe Atlassian Crowd. So you do your Jira administration in Jira, your Confluence administration in Confluence, and the same for Bitbucket, Server, and Bamboo. And so this means that IT teams tend to be a little bit more centralized. You have a well-defined group of people that are in charge of who's making decisions about which products people get access to. You also have a lot more flexibility when it comes to security, because if you're running Atlassian applications behind your corporate firewall, basically that's a shortcut to cutting off a lot of potential security vulnerabilities that might exist in the public internet. And finally, when you think about complexity that manifests when administering Atlassian on server, it's all about diversity and variance. You're going to have many different products and many instances. They could all be varied. They all have different kinds of scaling challenges. So you could be in a situation where you have a massive user base of users that are just reading content in Confluence, and at the same time a smaller user base, but with a lot of high concurrent activity in Jira Software, and you need to plan your hardware options based on those different types of usage profiles. And that's something a cloud administrator never has to deal with.
Thanks, Dave. So meanwhile, in Atlassian Cloud, the landscape starts to look very different. And think about your organization. What defines the Atlassian products that you own? If you're running our products on-premise, it probably means the ones that you're running on your own infrastructure, behind your network, and the ones that you're paying your bill for. But in the cloud, you can have many different sites and products that your users in your company are accessing. And for the longest time, the organizing principle that we've used at Atlassian for Jira and Confluence is the site. And it has a well-defined domain like acme.net. So you might have your main acme.net instance of Jira Software and Confluence, but you might also have your separate instance for your Jira Service Desk. And each of those instances will have their own sets of Jira projects and Confluence spaces. But as the Atlassian universe has expanded, we now have Trello and Bitbucket with their own teams and boards. So your users could start using Trello and Bitbucket by their own choice. And in order to help you manage all of this complexity, over the last couple of years, we've introduced two new concepts. And the first is this concept of a global Atlassian account. And this means that your user has one account that works across all of our cloud products. And no matter how many products and sites a user accesses, they will log in with the same account. And the second concept is something very new that we've recently introduced, and it's called organizations. And that's like the big Acme org that you see in that diagram map there. It's pretty much a new home, a new global administration layer from which you can manage all the people that belong in your company, regardless of products and sites. So a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to show you how you can make organizations work for you and the awesome stuff that makes organizations possible. So to quickly summarize, in the cloud, you can't always control the products and the sites that your users are accessing. So you need a single place to manage all the users in your company in one place. And next, one layer below, you have sites, which is a grouping function for Jira and Confluence. And this level of federation allows you to define a single instance of the products, and this is how you're being billed for. So this is probably the concept that most of you in the room are familiar with, because this is how you're managing users' access and licensing on the products. And finally, in the cloud, we typically see our customers expressing a greater desire to delegate more parts of administration to individual teams. And we know that adoption of Atlassian products is typically driven more from the bottom up. So as an admin, you're constantly doing a balancing act between making sure that you're maintaining standardization across your entire company while still promoting the flexibility that allow teams to be agile. So in Jira Cloud, we've been making a big investment in building out capabilities to support this model, which Dave will show off a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about the kinds of people that make up your admin team, whether you're a server, data center, or cloud customer.
So we've identified 4 personas that broadly represent the type of admins that we encounter in different organizations. They'll always look different depending on your company or your team structure. So I want you to use them as an example to help you get an idea of what kinds of admins we see and how they might sit within your Atlassian admin hierarchy. And so the first is the IT owner, an essential player on most teams. IT owners usually focus on the operations of the entire company. They care about things like security and compliance, and they tend to look after the company's overall spend on tools. They set company-wide policies around security or identity, and they try to automate processes and create integrations between all the different tools at the company. They might delegate certain admin responsibilities to other personas, and they don't necessarily have to know the specific details of every product that they're responsible for, because they're just looking after the overall impact on the IT operations of the company. Another member of your admin team could be a practices champion. Practices champions usually have deep knowledge of specific practices, and they care deeply about users and teams getting at their company, getting the most out of a tool. They're frequently on top of the newest product features, but more importantly, they're trying to assist users achieve the full potential of each product with a practice like agile coaching or ITSM, or DevOps. These are the key practices that underlie our tools, and in some cases that means they're administering the tools, but often their focus is on teaching and optimizing.
And next, we have product tuners, who usually has very deep and specific knowledge of each individual product. If that sounds like you in the room, good, because they're probably the main members of your Jira and Confluence admin team. And their priority is about making the product performant, making sure that every aspect of the product is configured correctly, and supporting the requests that come in from individual users of that product. And sometimes, they might need a little help by the IT owners to help them with managing the user lifecycle. But really, their main focus is on making sure that the specific project configuration and needs from the practice champion or project leads are met, and supporting the teams with how they run the product. So next we have project leads. And these guys, they just want to get their jobs done. The tool is simply a means to an end, and they understand the specific needs of their team or the particular projects they're working on. And project leads usually care about configuring their Jira project, Confluence Space, Bitbucket repo, or Trello board, so they can help their team get the most out of the tool. And finally, we can't forget about everyone's favorite, your corporate overlords. And these people are looking for a return on investment on the tools themselves. You might have to get budget approvals from your finance team for any software purchases that you might want to make, or you might have to get sign-off from your CTO before you can proceed with acquiring a specific piece of software.
All right, now to the best part. What are we actually doing at Atlassian to facilitate a better world for your admin team? It all comes back to the personas that we just went through. The improvements that we've worked on really span the breadth of different admin needs and use cases. So for data centers specifically, we've really focused on two types of personas, our product tuner and our practices champion. And when you're responsible for the day-to-day excellence of a complex application like Jira, performance is always going to be top of mind. Making sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck with your available infrastructure is critical to how you support the business. So it was with a ton of excitement that we released Project Archiving in Jira software earlier this year. As your Jira instance grows, you probably, as you know, have a lot of projects from years ago that are still in your database. And over time, they add a lot of unnecessary load on operations like indexing, and that can cause a serious performance impact. So managing the growth in this data has been one of the most requested improvements from our large Jira data center administrators. So now, when you have projects that are no longer running, you can now close those projects. That removes those projects and those issues from the Jira index, but not from storage. And by removing the old projects, that means you can reduce clutter for your end users. And it means you have a lighter index, which speeds up search, and it speeds up important cluster operations and index replication for your nodes. In our performance testing, we saw that we achieved a 11% faster loading time for Jira boards and 25% faster JQL searches. It's not just about the capabilities that we build, though. Just as important is your ability to effectively plan your deployment. We know that investing in data center additions is a fundamental component to many companies' scaling strategies on the Atlassian stack, so we want to make sure that you have the resources in place to do that effectively. To that end, we've introduced a set of best practices guides for Atlassian data center deployments that cover topics like infrastructure configuration, when to add a second node, managing third-party apps, consolidating multiple instances. And we've also introduced a set of quick start guides to help you get up and running for the first time on data center quickly. And in our commitment to making it easier to run data center and for more customers to realize the benefits, we've introduced new templates to run Jira software and Confluence Data Center in Microsoft Azure. And speaking of Confluence, we've introduced different types of content profiles in Confluence Data Center and the accompanying configuration and environment recommendations so that you can plan your infrastructure correctly. But even if you're not responsible for the infrastructure itself, just the success of the teams running the product, we know that there's a unique set of requirements for server and data center customers. You need to make sure that teams are operating effectively, but in a relatively controlled environment. But they still have autonomy and agility. It's a lot to ask. And that's why we've committed to producing enterprise and product webinars multiple times a year. That's where we share the latest on upcoming innovations, on practices recommendations, so that you know what's coming and can plan your upgrades and your rollouts of new products accordingly. And second, we introduced the notion of enterprise releases for Jira Software, Jira Service Desk, and Confluence Server and Data Center. An enterprise release is a feature release that you know is going to get critical security and bug fixes throughout the supported window. So you don't have to constantly worry about upgrading to the latest version just to get bug fixes. That we've promised to do at least one enterprise release every year, and we think it's going to make a big difference in simplifying the life of your Atlassian administration team.
And obviously, we haven't forgotten about our cloud customers either. Over the past year, Atlassian has been actively investing in the area of enterprise cloud. So coming back to the admin roles, we know that many of our cloud customers choose the cloud deployment because they want to have the flexibility of running different instances to easily collaborate with people from both within their company and outside their company, for example, with contractors or consultants. But flexibility doesn't have to come at the cost of security or visibility, which is why I'm super excited to talk about the new features we shipped to make enterprise IT admins' lives a little bit easier in the cloud. As I mentioned before, we introduced a new global administration layer called organizations. So basically what it does, once you verify that you own the @acme.com domain, we collect all the Atlassian accounts that are on that email domain and grab it into the organization. And to help you manage this, we introduced a new Atlassian Admin Hub to manage all of this. And from here, you can view and create all of your organizations. And obviously, no administrator likes to do their job alone, so you can add other organization admins to help you out. And the Admin Hub shows you every account that you manage with the sites and products each user has access to. And as an administrator of a managed account, you can directly edit your user's details like name, email address, and job title, And when the user leaves the company, all you have to do is you disable the account from your organization, and immediately they're removed from your products and sites, so you will not be billed for that user on any Atlassian product. And as you heard in the keynote, today we introduced Atlassian Access to provide security for your organization. Today, Atlassian Access provides SAML single sign-on, enforced two-step verification, and password policies, but we're just getting started. And if you want to learn more about how Atlassian Access could work for your team, come along to our demo session tomorrow. I think it's at 11:45, or drop by and say hi to Dave and I at the Access booth. We'll be here for the remainder of today and also all day tomorrow. And last but not the least, today we announced that user provisioning from external directories is coming to Atlassian Cloud. Soon you'll be able to sync users and groups from your cloud identity provider like Okta or Microsoft Azure Active Directory, so you can manage your entire user lifecycle from one place. So that's just a brief taste of things to come in Enterprise Cloud. I'll now hand back to Dave to talk a little bit more about what we're specifically doing in Jira Cloud.
Thanks, Helen. So I want to end with a little peek into the future of Jira Cloud. It's a peek that you already saw in the keynote somewhat, so might not be super surprising, but this is where we've made, I think, the biggest single investment across Atlassian in lower-level administration in our products. We want to make it possible for teams to realize the full configuration power of Jira, even if it's just for a single project. And so as you can imagine, we have project leads in mind when we worked on this feature. But it's important that we don't add power to the project lead at the expense of those product tuners, the Jira admins who work so hard to set up Jira the right way. So the reason why this takes so much investment and takes so much effort and so much planning is because we want to make sure that as we introduce these capabilities, we do that in the right way so that in the long run, they lead to a better experience for every Jira administrator, regardless of whether you're operating at the project level or the global Jira level. So this is going to come to a shock to all of you, but sometimes Jira can be a little tricky to set up. You got workflows, you got screens, and issue type schemes, and work in progress limits, and custom field context, and it can all be a little bit of a nightmare. But that's where all of you amazing admins come in, so it's fine. But on the other hand, we know that there are a lot of teams that are just itching to get started. If we were able to give teams the ability to configure their projects independently, but do it in a way that you didn't produce the configuration mess that Jira admins have to then go and clean up, then you'd probably have the best of both worlds. So that's basically what we tried to do. So we try to empower Jira project admins and allow them to self-serve when possible in Jira Cloud. But at the same time, so to do that, all of the project configuration needs to be done at the project level. So instead of creating custom fields and issue types, and then in Jira, the Jira administration area, you create them within each project. So then you might ask, well, how do I make sure that all of those projects are consistent? I want all teams to be tracking work the same way and using the same fields. Maybe you have standard software development workflows for your company. And so we absolutely recognize that standardization is just as important as team-level flexibility. So we're working on introducing project templates to Jira Cloud. You'll be able to have mini Jira projects all sharing the same templates. The goal here is basically that you're getting the same sharing benefits as schemes, but it's a lot easier to understand and set up. So with that, let me introduce you to the new Jira project configuration experience. So you go to create your project, and immediately you can see that besides a new simplified user interface, we've simplified the initial permission set. So instead of creating a project and not knowing what permission scheme you're going to get, you get 3 straightforward options, and you can choose them from the moment that you create your project. Once you land in your project settings, we've made it simpler to understand and change things like the project key. And we've allowed you to directly create issue types inside of project settings. So I can go add a new issue type, fill in the name, choose an icon, add a description, and boom, I've got a new issue type added to my project. But I'm just getting started, we've got per project custom fields available in the new Jira Cloud projects. So you saw the new fields designer in the Summit keynote, which makes it super easy to drag and drop a new field directly onto the issue type, fill in an issue type, fill in a field name and description, and now you've got a new field. And finally, rules. Rules are really exciting because we're bringing the workflow capabilities that have previously been buried in the workflow editor right to the forefront on Jira boards. So if I go manage my rules, I can add a new rule. Let's say I want to assign an issue to someone. I choose which status I want this rule to apply to. So we'll go in progress, and I want to assign every in progress issue to Fernando. And so I've created my rule, and now all I have to do is move that issue into the in progress column, and boom, it's assigned to Fernando. So what's coming next? So you saw rules, you saw issue types and fields. We know that there's one big piece of Jira configuration that's still missing, and that's workflow editing. So over the coming months, we'll be working on bringing an all-new redesigned workflow editor to Jira. We're taking everything that we know that's working well about the workflow editor today, sprucing it up, bringing in some of the new capabilities like rules, and it'll be available on a per-project basis directly from project settings, just like the new issue types and fields. And what's really exciting is templates. So we'll be working on templates. Templates will allow you to share your configuration across multiple Jira projects. You'll be able to customize which times templates should apply. I think it's really, really exciting and a really, really big leap forward for how people are going to administer projects in Jira Cloud.
Okay, so to finish this up, I really hope Dave and I have managed to convince you that Atlassian does love their admins. We care deeply about your experience, whether you're an IT owner, project lead, product tuner, or practices champion, because simply put, Atlassian products can't run without the hard work of admins, and we ship these features and experiences specifically for you. So, and we put on Summit because of you, and we really deeply care about your user experience. So thanks so much for coming along today. We hope you learned a little bit more about administration and how the admin hierarchy works at Atlassian. And we would love it if you go out there, assemble your own Atlassian admin team, try out some of those new features, and talk to us. Talk to us about your experience, and hopefully we have made your lives a little bit easier. Come along and say hi to Dave and I at the Access booth. Let us know how you go, and enjoy the rest of Summit. Thank you.
We've got plenty of time for questions, so please stick around. 10 combined years of working on Atlassian admin.
In fact, we've never worked on anything else other than the admin experience.
Any takers? All right, I guess you can catch Dave.
We've got some love down there.
Oh, there we
go.
I have a question on this project, especially for the giving an access to the users, creating their own projects. So how it goes actually, it's not clearly mentioned or.
Yeah. The question was giving project creation access to users. Right?
Yes, especially, and how it going to promote it to the globally. Like
and how so in the new Jira Cloud, so we've created new project templates that are available for any user to create. You don't have to be a Jira administrator. At the same time, we retain control for Jira administrators, so it's governed by a global permission. So it's as simple as editing a global permission in order to keep it up to you whether or not this should be available to the end users. But if the end user does, if you do allow it and the end user does create a project based off of the new templates, we've spent I don't know, what was it, 18 months probably of hard back-end work in Jira to make sure that we could allow end users to create independent projects and they wouldn't add additional clutter. They wouldn't detriment Jira performance. You wouldn't go into your Jira administration console and see 1,000 workflows or something like that. So we worked really hard to make sure that they really did operate independently in a way that wouldn't screw up the configuration of anybody else's project. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you very much, guys.
We had one in the...
Ah, sorry. Hang on.
Thanks. I understand that there's now 2 code bases for Jira Server and Jira Cloud. Do you have plans to keep those in sync at all? Are these features coming out for Jira Server as well?
Do you want me to take? So I think part of the presentation in the keynote today, we said, so we did talk about that we had different code bases, and along with different code bases, we also have different roadmaps. And so the server team is tasked with listening to server customers and determining what's best for server and data center customers, and the same with the cloud team. And what you see with project configuration is we are both listening to our customers and coming up, and we've identified similar needs. Obviously, across server and cloud, we've been hearing from customers that allowing better delegation of project administration is really important. And so you saw that Jira Server over the last couple releases has introduced new delegated project administration features and things like per project priorities. And at the same time, we just went through a lot of the improvements that are coming to Jira Cloud. They're definitely not the same set of improvements, and you might see some of the things that we showed today end up in some form in Jira Server, and the exact same thing with some of the things Server has implemented, and vice versa. But it all comes down to the different levels of prioritization investment that we can put towards these features. So both teams are kind of actively working on this problem, but you won't necessarily see the exact same thing between each deployment option.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. If anyone else has got some more questions, they'll be upstairs at the booth. You're more than welcome to check that out with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.